Bank Studios.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Merry Christmas.
On AM 560.
Ho, ho, ho.
The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The pollster that I've used a lot over the last 20 years in political campaigns, Tony Fabrizio Lee, sat down with the Wall Street Journal to talk a little bit about the polling at present, what the landscape provides in terms of 2024, with the look ahead. I mean, understanding where we stand today, things can change. But where we are today, says Tony Fabrizio, we're at a point where the mood in America is very, very sour, pretty much universal. When you look at people's angst, particularly economic angst, you realize there's a disconnect between what was just shown on the top of the fold, that the economy is doing well, low unemployment, market returns. What you show there with the macro numbers and what they're experiencing at the micro level when they're going grocery shopping or buying gasoline or trying to apply for a home mortgage. When you look at where Biden has deteriorated, said Fabrizio, it's been largely weighed down by the economic concerns that people have. The sentiment really is not improving. If anything, it's gotten slightly worse. Despite all the good news out there, they're not feeling it on a day-to-day basis. And he goes on to say, the party out of power is the one that takes the lead on the wrong track number. But here, when you look at younger Democrats, particularly Democrats under the age of 50, they're way more sour about the direction of the country, and particularly these economic measures, Bidenomics, than their older brethren in the Democratic Party. He's asked about the 92 campaign in terms of a comparison. By the time the George H.W. Bush's reelection had rolled around in 92, the economy was growing at a 4% annual rate. So how did Clinton win? Well, ultimately, voters didn't believe it. Fabrizio said, there's another measure we asked in the survey, your personal financial situation. It's significantly underwater by about 30 points in the survey. That's where the rubber meets the road. Even if we get to a point where we're getting 4% growth, the problem is that jobs numbers and stock numbers for most people are amorphous. Inflation is something that people feel every single day. And he goes on to talk a little bit about the Biden-Trump matchup. And he says, look, when you look at the comparisons, Trump wins the comparisons with Biden on economy, jobs, inflation, the border, foreign policy. Biden wins on Social Security and Medicare and abortion and things of that nature. But guess what? The ones Donald Trump are winning are the ones that are most important to the voters right now. And that explains Trump's move in the polls against Biden generally and in the swing states that we discussed at the end of last week into this one. But there's something else happening, too, if you look at some polling. And I know people may scoff at this, but we're here to raise what's being reported and discuss it. Nikki Haley has made a move in New Hampshire, closing in one CBS News poll to within 15 of Trump, 44 Trump, 29 Haley, 11 DeSantis, 10 Christie. There's still a ways to go, even if that's accurate. And that same CBS News poll has Trump up 58-22 on DeSantis in Iowa to 13 for Haley. So, 36 on DeSantis and 45 on Haley in Iowa. So he wins Iowa. And if he wins by a wide margin, a little less than a month from now, that gives him momentum a week later going to New Hampshire, where unless something significant happens over the next 30 days, he's likely to have some sort of double-digit lead going into New Hampshire. So I'm not racing the prospect of a real primary campaign quite yet, but it's worth discussing. So let's do so. To pour over some of these numbers with us, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Scott McKay. He's the publisher of the Hayride, a contributing editor to the American Spectator, also author of the Revivalist Manifesto, and he's got a new book out about the Obamas as well. Scott, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, how are you? Happy Monday.
Good. So, you heard what Tony Fabrizio had to say based on his surveys and what he's seeing in the landscape in a sort of a general election environment. And then the CBS News poll that provides a flicker of hope for the never Trumpers, a flicker of hope for people like Jamie Dimon that maybe Nikki Haley can make a race of it. What's your assessment?
I don't think Nikki Haley makes the race of it. I think more, particularly Republicans, despise Nikki Haley than actually like her. And I think that Donald Trump is still at or above 50% in all of these polls that you see. And yes, maybe there might be something of a race in New Hampshire and something of a race in South Carolina. But once you get beyond that and you get into sort of the Super Tuesday states and the things that come later, I mean, those are all going to be massive Trump victories. And, so he's going to sew up the nomination pretty easily. The only hope that there ever was going to be that he was not going to be the nominee, if you're not for Donald Trump, would have been if Ron DeSantis was able to eat into enough of Trump's supporters to make it a race. But, that's a Trump 2.0 candidacy when the public is not really done with Trump 1.0. So, all of that is fine and well and good. The real, the real question is not the primary, but the general election, and how much trouble the Democrats are in if these third-party people that are in the race are going to pull the kinds of numbers that they're polling at, which I don't know if they will. But if RFK Jr. is sitting on 20%, Joe Biden is not going to get reelected.
Yeah, but they keep saying that he's pulling away support from Trump and not Biden.
That's not what the polling says.
I'm not buying any of that.
It's just not what the polling says. And that's with RFK and some of these polls at 8%. So, RFK Jr., Stein, and Cornel West, they're going to poll independents who are looking to make a rational decision from the two likely candidates, the two candidates who actually have a chance to win, make their vote count, disaffected independents that see the country upside down. There's going to be a flight to quality in the sense of what's the realistic choice. It's Trump versus Biden. And if you're a wrong track voter, then you're going to default to Trump, particularly when the options are people to the left of Biden. So, that's what the polling is telling us right now, which I suppose shouldn't surprise.
Well, what I'm saying is that if and when RFK Jr. takes to the campaign trail, the fact that they haven't given him Secret Service protection means you want to throw an if in there. He runs as a leftist, and you never know. You may get frustrated Democrats who just decide, you know what, I'm going to make a protest vote because I don't like any of this.
That helps Trump.
That does help Trump, and that's why I'm a little dubious on the polling that says that that these third-party guys harm Trump more than Biden.
I'm saying the opposite. No.
Yeah.
The polling consistently so far, when even RFK or RFK plus the other two is included, it consistently benefits Trump. That's the point.
I agree.
That's where it's at.
So I think that's where we are. I think the fact that these guys will not shut up about how Trump is a dictator and a Hitler in the making and all of this kind of stuff. I'm wondering if maybe that with the legal stuff not really having the effect that they wanted to, maybe now they're calling all the James Hodgkinsons out to chase Trump around with rifles.
Well, the other thing too is, think about, for the squishy Republicans in New Hampshire, John Sununu notwithstanding, boy, that was a pretty big turnout in Durham, North New Hampshire for Trump at that rally over the weekend. The energy that still exists behind that guy is just exponentially different than any of the other candidates in the field.
Agreed. And it ties into, the first part of your open, which is Fabrizio's polling that shows people in such a sour mood, right? Donald Trump has always been the antithesis to American politicians. And if you're on the left, you hate Trump, but anybody else, at least likes the idea of Trump because they think that the political class is so toxic. And of course, they're not wrong. And the Biden message team does themselves no favors by running around talking about how they've defeated inflation and that the inflationary numbers are down. Like, let's say, and this is like by no means an unusual circumstance. So the prices jump 25-30% in a couple of years for foodstuffs and things that you have to buy, right? And you are now running up a credit card debt to try to make ends meet, and the credit card debt is 20%, right? So the fact that those prices might stabilize still at a level you cannot afford, and you have cut back as far as you can, but your family has to eat and you have to pay rent and all of this kind of stuff. The fact that inflation is not over the top anymore doesn't help you. Your credit card debt mounts every month at 20%. And so the idea that, look, we've licked inflation and prices are stable, it's like, no, these people are all underwater and they're drowning. That's why Bidenomics is not a success. That's why you can run all of the headlines you want, above the fold at the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post, and it doesn't make any difference to these people. They know that their personal situation is desperate, and nothing has been done to fix that. You have to lower those prices. The rate of inflation is just the rate at which things are getting worse. But things are already so bad for the 50-60% of the American public that their purchasing power is nil, and they don't have the ability to take a vacation. They don't have the ability to go buy a new house or a new car or even a used car. They don't have the money to do anything that they want to do with their lives, and they feel like the American dream is slipping away because of what you've done to them.
Well, that's the 30-point spread to the negative that Fabrizio is referring to in terms of personal financial situation. That's exactly it. And Biden's effort to tell companies to slash their prices because inflation has slowed is not particularly persuasive either. And so, he's left betwixt and between because there's just seems to be an unwillingness to make a substantial pivot, which is all to the benefit of Trump at this point and Republicans if they can seize the opportunity.
That's right.
Speaking of Republicans being unified in this moment to seize said opportunity, I thought the mumblings coming out of the Senate after the impeachment inquiry vote last week were rather odd. First, Chuck Grassley expresses some skepticism about impeaching Biden. Then Mark Wayne Mullen makes an argument about he'll have to prove that he did things that rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors while president, not while vice president. And then Lindsey Graham had this to say on Meet the Press yesterday.
Okay, let's turn to the other big story on Capitol Hill, the impeachment, of course, of impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Your colleague, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, said that he does not see any evidence, quote, that the president is guilty of anything. Do you agree with him? Is there any evidence so far?
I haven't really been paying that much attention to it. They have to prove that President Biden somehow financially benefited from the business enterprises of Hunter Biden. We'll see.
Have they done it yet, in your mind?
If there were a smoking gun, I think we'd be talking about it. But
sounds like some Republican senators that aren't interested in being in the majority in the Senate.
Well, I can't really speak for Chuck Grassley because he's generally been pretty good when it comes to investigating corruption. So that is odd. Lindsey Graham does nothing but damage when he opens his mouth. Everything Lindsey Graham does is calibrated to make Republican dominance in elections more and more impossible. So it's absolutely not a surprise that he would say what he said. What's being missed here is this is an impeachment inquiry. It looks for smoking guns. It seeks the proof these guys say they don't see.
Well, of course,
today.
but wait, of course, though. But the people that are offering those weak responses, making those statements, they understand that. So they're saying those things despite the fact they understand that. So it calls, and Markwayne Mullen, Oklahoma, he wants to fight the Teamsters, literally. I mean, what is going on within the Republican caucus in the Senate as it pertains to this impeachment? It sounds like there's some desire to undermine what House Republicans are doing.
Well, I mean, that caucus is run by Mitch McConnell, who is the number one underminer of Republican and conservative politics in America since 2007. I mean, it's by no means a surprise that these guys, and certainly there are Republican senators who are on the opposite side of this, but these guys that we're talking about, are the usual suspects. They're always the ones that torpedo their own party. And now, of course, the impeachment piece against Biden is what's going on. So they're going to torpedo that. And I think it's somewhat a retaliation for not kowtowing on Ukraine, which, the uniparty that these guys in the Senate belong to is desperate for that $60 billion to get out of the House so that they can vote it through and go spend it. And that's not happening. So, you're going to see pushback on other things from them.
Well, I really want to ask you quickly about Leave the World Behind. We actually watched it this weekend, and you're not a movie critic, but you've turned into one.
Well, I'm an Obama critic, right? Because the new book that's out is Racism, Revenge, and Ruin. It's all Obama, and it talks about the destruction of the America that we all knew and loved that existed in 2007. And along he comes to make an end of the world movie. And if you'll notice, having watched it, the end of the world is not that big a tragedy in the eyes of the Obamas, right?
Yep.
You go watch the last episode of Friends to celebrate the end of the world. This is a really misanthropic, bleak movie, much more so than other end of the world flicks where at least there's some semblance of recognition. It's a bad thing if the world goes to seed, and in this, it's just kind of a thing. This is what's happening, and to me, it was very stark the way it was presented that way. And then you find out that Barack Obama gave copious notes on the script to Sam Esmail before this movie was made.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's classic nihilism. It's like the whole end of the world thing. I'm so put upon by the end of the world. Everything is too cool for school. I mean, I haven't watched it. I'm not going to because why waste the time? Scott McKay is the publisher of the Hayride, contributing editor at the Spectator, American Spectator, author of the Revivalist Manifesto, as well as his new book he just mentioned, Racism, Revenge, and Ruin. It's all Obama. Scott McKay, thanks as always.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
I want Christmas. Just give me plain baby Jesus lying in a manger Christmas.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Imagine what your future looks like. Is the picture a little blurry? Hey, it's Sean Thompson here for Alpha Wealth Group. When we look ahead, we're visualizing where we want to be, and for retirement, that can be hard without a written financial plan. Tom Fortino of Alpha Wealth Group can help you bring your retirement picture into focus. For decades, Tom has been crafting customized financial strategies. His goal is to help you protect your savings,